The headline you are about to hear claims that Europe's space launch failed. But if the rocket actually reaches orbit, that title will look like a lie. The truth is more dangerous for Brussels than any explosion ever could be. Even with a perfect flight, Ariane 6 proves one thing. Europe has already lost the strategic race for independent launch capability. This isn't about engineering. It's about whether Europe can survive being held hostage by American or Chinese pricing and capabilities in a future conflict. To understand why this matters, we must look at the scale of what is happening right now. The European Union is attempting to build its own sovereign access to space, driven by the rhetoric of strategic autonomy. Yet, the data reveals a stark imbalance that makes this goal nearly impossible under current conditions. Between 2019 and 2021, the United States accounted for 93% of all launches conducted by major space powers, including China and Russia. Within that American dominance, SpaceX alone managed to launch 81% of U.S. payloads in 2021. This single company represented 75% of the total global payload count during a period when Europe was struggling to find its footing. The gap is not just about money, it is about industrial scale and frequency. The core problem facing Brussels is structural rather than technical. While European leaders speak of sovereignty, their governance model actively prevents them from acting as a unified strategic power. Authority over space programs is fractured across three distinct entities: national governments that control the budgets, the European Union, which handles broad regulation, and the European Space Agency tasked with managing technical execution. This tripartite split creates an incentive structure where no single actor has the authority to consolidate production or drive down costs through a centralized industrial base. When you have 27 different nations negotiating launch contracts while Brussels manages rules of engagement, you do not get the kind of rapid iteration and volume required to compete with American commercial spaceflight. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. This fragmentation leaves Europe in a position where it possesses high-quality components but lacks the capacity for sustained independent access. The reliance on external providers is not merely an economic inconvenience. It represents a critical security vulnerability that becomes fatal during geopolitical crises. We have already seen how fragile modern military operations are when dependent on commercial satellite infrastructure. A cyber attack on the Viasat KA-SAT network demonstrated that these networks are primary targets in contemporary warfare, capable of blinding command structures and disrupting logistics instantly. The stakes were made even clearer when Elon Musk publicly threatened to restrict Starlink access during the conflict in Ukraine. This was not a hypothetical scenario. It highlighted the reality that European military resilience collapses if Washington decides to cut off data or infrastructure support during a geopolitical crisis. If the United States chooses to prioritize its own interests over allied stability, Europe has no immediate alternative for orbital connectivity or launch capability. The Ariane 6 program was designed as a counterweight to this dependency, but even a successful first flight does not solve the underlying issue of who controls the supply chain when it matters most. The irony is that European collaboration on other space initiatives often reinforces rather than breaks this dependence. For instance, while an ESA-built service module for Orion successfully supported astronauts returning from Artemis II, this partnership cements Europe's role as a component supplier within a U.S.-centric architecture. Over 60 nations have signed the U.S.-led Artemis Accords, which establishes American norms and infrastructure standards for lunar exploration. In this framework, Europe provides specialized hardware but does not control the launch dominance required for true strategic sovereignty. The result is a dependency that persists regardless of how many rockets are built or launched from French Guiana. The path to genuine autonomy would require breaking these internal rules and unifying defense budgets with industrial policy in a way that matches the scale of American commercial spaceflight. Until then, Europe remains held hostage by U.S. pricing and capabilities. The launch is not an end. It is proof that without structural reform, Europe cannot compete in a world where orbital access has become a weaponized commodity. Every year spent trying to replicate SpaceX's model with fragmented national budgets only widens the gap between European ambition and strategic reality. The question for curious viewers is no longer whether Ariane 6 can fly, but what it means that a continent of 200 million people cannot guarantee its own access to space without relying on a foreign power's goodwill. The failure here is not in the engines or the fuel. It is in the realization that strategic autonomy requires more than just rockets. It demands a unified industrial and political will that Europe has so far been unable to assemble against the overwhelming momentum of American commercial dominance. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.